how did the smuggling operation allegedly work? So in this situation, allegedly, the case there was an inmate working with an employee who the inmate convinced the employee to bring contraband into the jail, and the employee agreed to do that. It appears that it happened twice prior, and then the Special Investigation Unit learned of another potential for it to happen. They set up an operation, they monitored what was going on, and they eventually found that this employee was going to bring in more contraband, and they allegedly caught her in the act of doing so.
How do we stop situations like this? From background checks, what's moving forward?
Well, everybody here gets the same background check, and that's also a new practice. There used to be different levels of background check. In internal affairs now, they treat everyone the same, whether you're a volunteer, a contractor, or a correction officer. There used to be different standards for each, but now everybody has the highest standard. And some people can come in without a criminal record, without even any intention of doing this, but sometimes they just get wrapped up in it, and that does happen. Other times people will take a job here with the intention of doing things wrong, and that happens as well. It's to be determined what was going on in this case, because this has to play itself out in court. But as far as looking for ways to stop drugs from coming in, I've identified 5 ways that drugs come in, and we just have to be vigilant to catch those. The 5 different ways that drugs come in the jail is through staff, and that includes contract staff and volunteers, and inmates, visitors, the mail, and aerial. And aerial can be throwing stuff over the wall, over the fence, using a drone. And just a few weeks back, you might have remember there's another press release we issued where a former inmate was caught throwing something over the wall at Ash Street, and he was caught, and he's being prosecuted for that as well. But those are the 5 ways, and it's really up to the Special Investigation Unit and Internal Affairs to do the best they can to either catch employees or catch inmates doing, like illicit activity. Well, that's how they work on it.
And what are you doing now to prevent something like this from happening?
What do we do now? It's an ongoing struggle. It's one thing right now we're doing is making this prosecution known to the public that if you engage in this type of activity and you get caught, we are going to prosecute you. That's something like right now, but just more broadly speaking, one of the things that we're trying to do, drugs inside a jail is just a real problem, and keeping drugs out of the jail is a challenge for every jail and every prison in the country. This jail it's not unique to this jail, everywhere. We've increased the number of drug detection dogs that we have in the K-9 unit. The K-9 unit is here as well. So they're doing enhanced screening for employees, staff, and visitors when they come in. We want to try and keep drugs from coming out in the first place. We also screen the inmates when they're coming back from the court or when they're newly admitted. We issued a press release a couple weeks back about an individual who got himself arrested on purpose trying to bring drugs into the jail. He got caught in the process. But there's a lot of different things. There's the 5 different ways that people can bring drugs into jail, get drugs into jail, and those are things we have to address each one of those.
And can you talk about how these drugs were brought in? I know it's on pieces of paper to specify that. And is that unique? Are they getting more creative?
Well, yeah, K2 presents a unique situation because the drug dogs can't detect it, unfortunately, but there are other ways that it can be detected, and so there's other things that can, other ways K2 can be detected. We don't want to talk about the ways we can detect K2 because then, people who would try to bring it in are going to try and work around that, but there are ways to go about that. And in this, a sheet of K2, it's like an 8.5 by 11. On the street, that'll go for about $50, roughly $50, but in jail, it's now going for about $5,000. And when I first got here 3 years ago, I believe it was going for about $2,000 a sheet. So basic economics means that is either a good thing on our end, because that means the demand is still the same, but the supply is being reduced, therefore the price goes up. That's one possibility. The other scenario is that the demand has gone up, but the supply has stayed the same, so therefore the price went up. So, but I'd like to think, though, that it's getting more and more difficult because of the work of Special Investigation Unit, K-9 unit. It's a lot more difficult to get contraband in the jail.
How did Hub allegedly get the K2 from?
Say again?
Where did Hub allegedly get the K2 from?
For that question, I'd rather ask Christine Fortin, who was the lead investigator on that. She probably could answer that with a lot more detail than I could. So Christine, you want to feel comfortable? Okay.
Could you spell your first and last name for us?
Sure, it's Christine Fortin, Christine, Fortin.
Okay, and your title?
I'm a captain.
Okay, how did Hope allegedly get access to the K2?
She communicated with inmates, that former inmates on the outside and inmates that were previously released, and set up a meeting, and she met with the individuals allegedly and obtained the contraband.
And how long had she been working here before these, contacts were made and the K2 was allegedly delivered?
18 months approximately.
Is there any insight into how she was, I don't know, the word recruited? I mean, how does a librarian suddenly become an accused drug smuggler?
She interacted with the inmate, the alleged inmate that received the contraband, so she had the ability to meet with them.
And investigators believe she acted intentionally with this. It's not something that she was wrapped up in, correct?
No, she did it on her own.
How much money worth of drugs was it?
Approximately $65,000 worth. It was about approximately 13 pages. So about $5,000 a page.
Does she have a prior record?
I'm not sure.
We did background check.
Was there any?
Yeah, we did a background check on her before she started working here, and there was no prior record. Otherwise, she likely wouldn't have been able to work here. But Christine, any questions?
So, was there any romantic relationship involved with the librarian and any other inmates?
I'm not gonna answer that at this time.
You talked about these sheets. I think this is more for the sheriff. But
Okay.
that seems like an easy way to be bringing drugs into the, you were talking, I guess, earlier about how you ban paper? Or
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have a policy and a practice not to allow employees, visitors, guests to bring in like paper. And, because K2 is one of the ways that paper can come in. And so that's just, it's an ongoing effort to be vigilant, to catch people when they're coming through secure reception or when they're coming back from court, if they're an inmate or they're a new admission. But it's an ongoing process to try and enforce that.
And are you all looking through are there any books that are kept or that she looked over frequently that have been looked over to make sure there's no other K2 in there?
I don't think that has come up as an issue. No, the answer is no to that, no. Nothing to worry about there.
Can you maybe talk more generally about the impact of what it means when drugs are smuggled into the prison? Does it lead to other crimes?
Yeah.
Like, what is...
So drugs coming into the jail is a health and safety issue for the employees as well as the inmates. You can have a lot of people here, I'd say as many as 80% of the people here at some point in their life, even recent history, were involved with drugs or have some type of mental health and substance abuse issues. So there's a lot of comorbidity between the two. So people still have addiction issues, and we have drug treatment programs to try and address that. And even when inmates participate in the drug treatment programs, like the medically assisted treatment program, the MAP program, where they're getting Suboxone or methadone, they sometimes still try and smuggle that back to the housing units. Sometimes the inmates don't want to do that, though. Sometimes they don't want to smuggle the stuff back to the housing units. But what happens is they're sometimes bullied, pressured, threatened to bring drugs back to the housing units. If they don't comply, other inmates back in the housing units can become violent. So when inmates become violent, then it becomes a safety issue for them, but also for the officers who have to break up the fights. So it causes a whole cascade of problems. Some inmates have, like when they start smoking something, and it fills up a housing unit, officers have to worry about inhaling that as well. But for more on that, I have a lot of my staff here. Does anybody else, who have more experience on the floor, does anybody else want to offer a comment of like the impact of drugs, or if anybody wants to come over and say something, you're welcome to. Just because you guys have more experience, like work in a housing unit. They're all pointing the finger at each other. Here he comes. I knew you. So this is Wayne Torres, Torres. He's the assistant superintendent. He's worked here for over 20 years, and he can speak a little bit more of the impact. And actually, Wayne used to run the medically assisted treatment program for the inmates. So Wayne.
Thank you. Well, the effects of the drugs, what it does when it comes in, it escalates everything from gang violence to the hustling to the overall safety of the inmate population and the staff that works here, including the civilians. When something comes right through the door, regardless of the background checks, it kind of hits home to every security officer and employee that works here. It puts some overall danger inside. So to combat that with the sheriff's department, you step into the door from an application to the whole time. We monitor, we watch, but unfortunately, in this career with corrections and the demand for drugs, it's very, very challenging. SIU did above and beyond with this investigation. So the challenge is always present.
Other questions y'all have?
In the press release, it's mentioned that this might be the largest in history.
Yeah.
What are previous instances, and how do they compare to this one?
To my knowledge and to knowledge of the staff I've talked to, we don't think we've ever caught anybody allegedly bringing in $65,000 worth of drugs before. And that's why I described it as, you know, what we believe to be the largest in this jail's history. Sometimes so this, like others, don't really compare to this one. Other times, some people might bring stuff in. We don't have enough evidence to prosecute. But we have enough evidence to, if it's like a contract worker, we'll say, we're going to pull your security clearance, you can't come back. We have a strong reason to believe, suspicion to believe. But there's ever been anything quite like this before. Yes, sir.
Sure. Can you tell me maybe how it felt to have the drugs coming from not just a visitor or what have you, but allegedly a member of your own staff?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know if you were here before she was hired or after, what have you, but what that felt like, if you can about that.
Yeah, she started during my tenure, and it's, I'm not going to speak to this particular case. I'm going to speak generally to any employee who would be doing this, not to the specific individual who's alleged to commit these crimes. But for any employee that would do this, I would say it's extremely disappointing, and that's I don't even know how much of an understatement that is. You're betraying the people you work with. You are putting them at risk. You're putting yourself at risk. You are disappointing. If you get caught, you're going to be disappointing your family, your friends, and it's totally avoidable. You have a steady paying job, and it's pretty much just greed. That's what it is. It's greed and maybe a bit of narcissism, but it is something that is like a danger and a risk to everybody. As the assistant superintendent said, the gangs, when they get involved, the violence goes up. It's a real problem for everybody. But whoever does this, though, they're betraying the trust of the people they work with. They're betraying the trust of the public, and there's just absolutely no excuse for it, no reason for it.
And we were just talking about the inmate uprising last year, and now this. What is Bristol County doing to ensure the safety of the inmates as well as the staff?
A lot of things. There's a lot of policies and procedures that we follow that are consistent with the practices that other jails and prisons have, and so we start there with the basics. With the uprising that we had in 2023, that was a byproduct of a lack of locks on doors, and this is something I've asked the state legislature for the last 2.5 years for money to put locks on doors, so that way we can run a more safe facility, because locks on doors keep inmates safe from each other. They keep the officers safe from the inmates, and if a fight breaks out between two inmates and it's in a housing unit, other inmates can then start coming out of their cells and participate in that if there's no locks on doors. So at this jail, we have 11 housing units out of 22 that don't have locks on doors. And I've been asking the state legislature for money for that at least 6 times through emails and in-person requests, tours of this facility to put locks on doors. I mean, locks on doors is not a challenge I thought I'd be dealing with when I was campaigning for mayor back in 2022, but when I got here, I quickly found out that was a big problem, and it is something that we're a jail. There's no reason why the state legislature shouldn't just say, how much money do you need to put locks on doors? It's a safety issue for everybody. If we were to put locks on doors, we have to put toilets in cells first, but if we were to do that, in just 3 housing units, we could close the Ash Street Jail. Now, I didn't campaign on closing the Ash Street Jail, but I learned since getting here that if we had more housing units with locks on doors, we could bring those inmates back from Ash Street and bring them here, and then ultimately save the taxpayers a lot of money, run a much safer facility, offer inmates better programming. So there's a lot of things that surround that particular issue.
The librarian resigned after she was allegedly
I don't remember the reason for her resignation. I don't remember. Does anybody on the staff remember what the reason was? No, she resigned, and but in the past, after a resignation would happen, under the previous administration, there wouldn't be any follow-up with the prosecution. But like I said, we're doing things differently now, and we want to prosecute and make it public that if you engage in this type of behavior, we're going to, if you get caught, we're going to prosecute.
Currently, what is her status?
I don't know. She doesn't work here. I don't know where she is outside, but she was indicted with a grand jury, and then she faced arraignment, I think, a week or two ago, and now we're here talking about it.
And how long had the alleged, scheme been going on in total?
I want to say maybe it was 6 months. Yeah, I think it was about 6 months. I think in the press release we indicated that there were 2 prior alleged transactions where drugs were brought in for the inmates, and then this was the 3rd one. But I think it was over a period of about 6 months. And she worked for us for about 18 months.
So for the $65,000 worth of material, that was just for the third alleged transaction?
That was for the 3rd transaction, yes.
So do we know how much for the previous 2?
Do we know? We don't know. No, we don't know. So, yes, sir.
You list staff, you gave us the 5 bullet points of how drugs get into the jail. You list, I think, listed staff on
Yes.
that list. Is this like a common enough thing that's like a, like a recurring problem that staff are kind of shuttling drugs into the jail?
So staff bringing contraband into a jail happens everywhere. And it's, you don't know what you don't know. And so we don't know if that is the majority of it, if it's the minority of it, we just don't know. But that's just one of the means. So like I said, you have staff, inmates, and visitors. Those are all 3 different types of person that enters this jail. And then you have the aerial, which people can throw it over, and then the mail. Those are the 5 different ways. So, but, indicating that staff is one way isn't an indication of, it's like, there's 5 different ways. That's not 20%, it's not 70%, it's not 5. We just don't know what percentage that would be. We don't know what you don't know. It's called the dark figure. Yeah.
Was the librarian, does she allegedly get any money or benefit from doing this?
That's something I don't know the answer to, but I could maybe let the special prosecutor, or we don't. Yeah, she didn't. There was no monetary exchange that we know of.
She doesn't get any benefits post-employment, though.
She resigned from the jail, so she is just severed from public service, to my knowledge, unless she picked up a job in another public agency, but not to my knowledge.
So then, I guess we'll kind of ask what the point was, what the motivation was, maybe if you have any insight into that at all.
That's going to be something that if you caught up with her, you could ask her that, or you could follow the court case. That the motive may come out in the court case when she's being adjudicated and getting her due process. I just don't know that.
What was the biggest indicator that there were drugs coming into the jail?
Oh, well, we know there are drugs in the jail. I mean, sometimes there's a lot of different ways that Special Investigation Unit learns about drugs coming into the jail. One way that's not a secret, because I don't want to disclose any of the investigation methods that they use, but one way that's not a secret is sometimes the officers and employees will actually smell it. They'll smell it. They'll come across inmates who are under the influence. Sometimes inmates overdose on things. So those are, without disclosing the methods used that SIU or Internal Affairs learns about things, those are some of the more obvious ones. But there's no question about that, and it is something we take very seriously. And like I said, the K-9 unit used to have comfort dogs. They have COVID detection dogs. They had explosive detection dogs. Now the K-9 unit is exclusively looking for drugs. We don't do anything outside of the jail. We're just looking for, the K-9 unit is just looking for drugs inside the jail. So we really concentrated their efforts on that. Yeah. So, any other questions? No. So to my staff, does anybody want to add anything that I might have left out, or a question that you have? No? Okay. So, very good. So we do have, like I said, our Assistant General Counsel, Sam Reed, who's here. So if anybody has any questions for her, or like Christine, if you have any other follow-up questions that you didn't think of. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Are there any surveillance video? Do we have any surveillance video? Yes, we do, but I don't know if that's something we can release, because there's still like an active court case going on right now. And so if we were to release that at this point, I think eventually it can be released. But if we were to release it right now, before a jury convenes and the jury can actually, hear from from both sides of defense and prosecution. We don't want to potentially bias a jury and put stuff out there. So I don't think that's something we can release right now. Yeah.
Do you know when she'll be appearing in court again?
I don't know. Do we know the next court appearance? No, we don't know. No, but that's probably something, I mean, there might not even be something scheduled at this point, so that's something that you could check with Tom Quinn's office, the DA's about, and you could check with Dan Bennett, the special prosecutor, and yeah, that's probably to be determined. Yeah. So cool. So, and by the way, if any of you didn't get the email directly from me, maybe one of your bosses or the news desk forwarded it to you, if you want to give me your email address before you leave, I'll add it to the press release list. That way I make sure you get press releases directly from me and it doesn't get filtered through like a boss or a news desk. So just, don't be shy about giving that to me before you leave. So anyway, that's it. All right, thanks folks.